welcome everybody here for a webinar today. We're going to be talking about the art of customer onboarding and finding the balance between high security and great user experience. Yeah, quite luckily for you, I'm joined here today by some great panelists, so you don't have to listen to my voice the whole time. Yeah, please, let's start and let's introduce our speakers to you. So yeah, maybe ladies first. Zamfira, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and tell who you are?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Zamfira Kisaeva. I run technology and enterprise strategy at Scotiabank. And part of my responsibilities relatively recently was looking into the digital identity as the strategy and in the broader Scotiabank context. So happy to talk about that and have pretty good understanding of what the landscape looks like and what the banks are thinking, particularly here in Canada.
Super, great to have you with us. Yeah, maybe Ana Lucia, do you want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Sure. So hi, my name is Ana Salazar. I work at ID Now and I head up the financial services offering at the UK and Ireland. Just to give you a bit of background, ID Now is one of the leading identity verification providers. We have headquarters in Germany and we've been around for 7 years. We serve 650 organizations from banks, Commerzbank, UBS, to more digital firms like N26 and Klarna. And we provide document verification and biometrics to comply with multiple regulations. So very happy to be here as well.
Great to have you with us. And then we'll go to the next one. James, do you want to quickly introduce yourself as well?
Yep, so I'm James Sullivan. I'm COO at Ziglu. So Ziglu is a UK-based payments and crypto broker offering services to retail customers. So customers can onboard digitally through external IDV suppliers, and then we provide a range of payment services and crypto trading.
Thank you very much for that, and yeah, fantastic to have you with us. And yeah, last but not least, and I guess yeah, maybe save the best to last. We've also got Roderick with us, so maybe just give us a quick introduction as well to yourself.
Not at all the best, but thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Rod Boothby. I'm the global head of identity for Santander. For folks that don't know us, Santander is the world's 4th largest retail bank with banking services delivered throughout Latin America, Mexico, US, UK, Spain, obviously, where we're headquartered, Portugal and Poland. And then we have financial services, particularly funding car loans through another 20 or so countries. Like Zamfira, I'm here to see where and how we can take banking services and the kinds of tools that banks have to verify users and make them generally available to a wider set of developers.
Great stuff. It's great to have you with us, and yeah, as everyone can see, we have a vast array of knowledge here from I would say all corners of the financial services space, which is fantastic. To start the session off, I just wanted to talk about the impact that essentially the pandemic had on us in the past 18 months and how everyone has been dealing with it. I mean, obviously the response, I guess, from the whole sector, from technology, whether it was financial services or wherever you was, I think it was vastly great because what we saw was a lot of improvement around digital services, a lot of improvement on customer onboarding. So maybe to start with you then, Rod, how did COVID affect your daily business, and did the pandemic bring any challenges for your organizations in the last 18 months?
Absolutely. It's been a huge challenge for our customers, for our employees personally. But it's also helped us to focus on what we can deliver as a trusted institution to support global commerce. And what it's encouraged us to look at is the kinds of things that we already have in place people trust banks as a store of their value, and that means things like or their valuables. And so that means things like their cash, their securities, but also their data. They know that banks will protect their data, which is very useful when you're trying to establish trust on the internet, because what we can do is to create a pattern where when people are logging in, they can log in with their bank ID. So, when you log in with your Facebook ID or you log in with your Google ID, the idea now is to copy a pattern that's been done for a while in the Nordics and Norway and Sweden, and make that available generally, so you can log in with your bank ID and the bank can provide verification services to support that. What it means is that you share less information, and instead what you do now is you get a situation where you can confirm that you are indeed who you claim to be, but without maybe handing over every single detail about your mother's maiden name, etc.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, and it's obviously good to see that, let's say even, I mean, we always talk obviously about fintech and how that kind of improved the whole, arrangements on the digital side of things. But it's also, I think it's great to see that also, let's say more traditional, if you put so traditional banks, have also now put a lot more focus into that. And maybe also to give the floor to James. James, from Ziglu's perspective during the pandemic, did you see a rise in fraud attacks? Did you see anything that kind of stood out for you during the last 18 months?
So we're probably in a slightly different position in that we had our first birthday yesterday, and we secured our license during the pandemic. So we've only known life during pandemic. I'd like to think that it's maybe a terrible thing to say, but we've had a good pandemic from a business perspective. The business was set up operationally for people to be remote first, so that was not a particular stretch for us. I think from a business perspective, people having perhaps more time and getting an interest in crypto has been good for the business. But in terms of the incidents of fraud, yes, we've definitely seen an uptick during that period. I think it's no surprise what we're experiencing is typical of what we hear that others are experiencing in the crypto payment space in the UK. I think the UK generally has seen financial crime increasing significantly in the last 12 months. We have certainly seen impersonation fraud, money mule activity, and a lot of scams as well. And I think some of that has been driven by some pandemic activity as well, and people being on furloughs and people receiving benefits going to the wrong place. So yeah, I mean, it's not been a good space from a financial crime perspective.
Okay, which is very, I guess, a little bit expected, but in some cases, obviously, we've seen even a higher, let's say, I guess, rate of fraud than anyone would have ever expected. Well, I mean, we would have never expected in the situation we're in right now anyway, because I guess in 2019 everyone was still doing the daily lives how it was, and then obviously to get changed 360 pretty much. Yeah, the same question to you, Zimfree, as well. Obviously at Scotiabank, and you've been head of technology. So what did you see? What were kind of the trends that you've seen in the past 12 to 18 months, and also if there were challenges, how did you overcome them?
Absolutely. So I think the two observations. One is, just want to repeat what everyone has said. One is COVID definitely accelerated digital. So if we thought that the digital is going to be the future, now we just see that it's becoming the future faster than we thought. And one of the things that we have realized is that the digital is there to stay. So whatever acceleration happened is going to continue, or there's going to be more of the digital, everything associated with digital. So whether that's digital ID, whether that's digital fraud, whether that's actually the whole thing around the sending people working from home and then moving to more of a hybrid model. So I think that's the first observation. The second one, it is just the banks typically are very difficult organizations to move. So they're usually slow and steady, and they rarely are really innovators or leaders out there. So they just move kind of in tandem. They observe, and then just like what my colleague from Santander said, we're in the business of trust, and so we have to be very cautious. And I think what pandemic has showed us is that there are certain things that we thought are impossible because we are just this big and then difficult to move organization. It's actually possible. So we were able to move many different services to digital. We were able to send thousands and thousands of people to work from home. So I think that's definitely showed the art of possible, and also that if we want to put our mind to it, we're actually able to get there. We just need that external nudge to make that happen.
Okay, great to hear. And I mean, obviously, hearing all of this, Anna Lucia, maybe you can put this more into context from a technology provider perspective. And obviously, taking all the points that James, Rod, and Zemfira have provided, what were kind of the things that you saw in the past 12 or 18 months? Have you seen a surge in companies reaching out to you? Has the behavior changed in any ways?
Absolutely. So, well, at ID now, something that we do constantly is monitoring trends. So what's happening and what are the factors that are really changing certain ways in how the business is changing. So COVID, absolutely, we saw a rise in the volumes that we were progressing. So for example, some products were up to 1,000% that were growing during the pandemics, and also like the kind of companies approaching us. So obviously this was a mix from let's say the pandemics that was more traditional banks coming to us because of branch, obviously they couldn't onboard, but also let's say regulations that have changed. So the 5 penalty with cryptocurrencies that they were coming to us. So that's one of the factors. So COVID has definitely increased the volumes that we have received and the demand. And then the second one, I think, resonating with James is the amount of fraud that we've seen coming through our systems. So in one of the reports that we publish every year, the most recent one, we saw, just to give you an idea of the figures, a 250% increase on fraud. So around let's say, document fraud, fake IDs was 180% rise. And in others, such as like social engineering and money muling, was 75% rise. So yeah, very, very similar to what organizations, to what has been said before. And something as well, internally, let's say as a provider, as a technology provider, it was very important for us analyzing this and see, okay, how do we react to these attacks that we've seen, and how do we collaborate alongside our customers to really mitigate the fraud and attacks.
Great stuff. And before I go on, can I just remind every attendee here that below you'll find a Q&A box where you can essentially ask questions and try to grill the panelists as much as I'm trying to do. But yeah, essentially, if you have any questions whatsoever, please pop them down below. We'll get to them at the end. Well, obviously, some questions, if it makes sense, I'll read out before, because we might obviously lose track of the theme. But yeah, please ask your questions down below if you want to know anything to any specific topics that we're talking about. So, I mean, as obviously the topic is, and as everyone is talking about, digital identity verification is becoming more and more obviously needed, or will be the they needed functionality going forward, because as we saw in a pandemic, obviously bank branches had to shut down because of the lockdowns. People, or maybe older people, couldn't get to their bank branches as they were. Again, there's also some cultural differences between different regions, such as an example, Europe or North America, also Asia. So all those factors come into play. So maybe starting with you, Rod. So with digital identity verification, is it like a main part now of your general digital transformation strategy in a way, and how are you taking this topic forward within Santander?
So The effort that I've been working on involves not just Santander, but a much broader group of other banks. And until they announce publicly, I can't say their names, but you can start to see some of them participating. The idea is pretty simple. The standard that you use today when you log in with your Google ID or you log into a site with your Facebook ID is called the OpenID standard. And it's like HTML. It's a free and open standard to use. And what we want to do is to create a free and open standard that many institutions can use to express ID verification. We hope to encourage companies like ID Now to use the same standard. What it means for developers of sites is that now it's very easy for them to integrate verification of identity in one standard framework. The verification of identity then goes through a simple process. When the person goes to log in, they get a simple message on their device. They'd get it through their banking app, say, or maybe they'd get it through a particular app like some kind of other type of solution. And the message says, do you want to share this information with the relying party? And say, for example, in the UK, you wanted to buy a lotto ticket. They would ask for two pertinent pieces of information. One is, are you a UK resident? And the second one is, are you 16 or over? Notice that you're not giving them your exact address and you're not giving them your exact age. You're giving them less than full detail information, but you are giving them everything that they need to know. And as an individual, you are controlling the flow of the information. This is not some mysterious background check that's going on where mountains of data about you are being shared between companies without your knowledge. Instead, this is one where you're controlling the flow. The idea is to build it so that we have a system that has first a tool that can help companies to register new customers. We call that EKYC, or electronic know your customer. The second one is to support login or outsourced login, which is just a strong customer authentication when you log in. The third is to support password reset. The fourth is to do a thing where we help companies to deduplicate. And then the last one, and perhaps the most important, is to do identity insurance. So say, for example, that I was trying to buy Anna was running a widget factory, and I wanted to buy $1 million worth of widgets from Anna. She sent me the invoice online. I wanted to confirm that it was really her who sent me the invoice, that those were the real payment instructions, and that she had indeed shipped the widgets to me. Her bank could verify that it was really her, or ID Now could verify that it was really her using this standard. And then with the insurance solution built on top of it, I could say, okay, well, I'm about to wire $1 million for this. Can I also buy some insurance based around the identity? So insurance that I have not been phished here, and maybe I pay $20 for that. It's a small fee compared to the $1 million I'm about to send, but it does transfer the risk, which is critical. And by transferring the risk, we allow people to act as though they are trusted everywhere. And that means that Anna could be running her widget factory halfway around the world from me. I might never have met her in person, but I can trust her as much as I can trust somebody that I've known for 20 years down the street. And that allows for an amazing amount of financial inclusion. It allows for an amazing amount of leveling the playing field. That's the goal.
I think that was a very, very good answer. I mean, anything to add from your side, Zamfira and James, digital identity?
I think the two things to add would be, well, first of all, it's in terms of digital ID, there was a recognition that it's not just something that is just a technology solution. It's something bigger than that. And so at the bank, it's anything from, well, the digital has accelerated, so there's going to be more digital crime. So we actually need to think of how do we protect our customers and combat fraud. The second one is, as we talked about, the banks are in the business of trust. So the consumer trust is an essential component of banking, and it's a foundation of the long-term relationship. So we'll need to have this holistic thinking around digital identity and how to protect customers, customer choices, and confidential data. And then the third one was the opportunity cost is relatively high. So if banks are not really at the point of incorporating digital ID in their systems and then creating that smooth customer experience, so the revenue is at the table, right? So we actually will not be able to get as many customers or provide as many services as we potentially could with our seamless digital ID in place. So I guess the first point is that there's a recognition it's important. So that's the first step. And then the second step is how do banks go around actually tackling that? And then if you look into that perspective, there are really two horizons. And usually, one is what do we have to do now so that we actually are keeping the track with the digital crime? We're keeping the track with what is the expectations of the customers and what the entire ecosystem is providing right now. So in Canada, for example, we have Verify Me, which is the system that the service that we use, that all banks use to provide digital ID. And then the second one is what is there in the long-term horizon that we'll need to make sure we're building towards so we can capitalize on those opportunities. And what there is anything from thinking differently about customer authentication and leveraging some of the sources using digital ID capabilities that currently do not exist, to really trying to think at the optimizing the customer journeys and then connecting different systems so that you have this true seamless experience that is both across all different products and across all different channels, which is a big challenge for any large bank that has systems that exist from 1965, right? So those are two things that we're really tackling. I would say most of the banks are really tackling right now, particularly here in Canada.
Okay, I mean, this is very interesting. And before we go to James, let me just maybe add to it, because I think Zinfiri just added a point which I think is very valuable. Do you think that for financial services, companies, whether the banks, fintechs, crypto exchanges, etc., that the let's say the onboarding experience, or let's say the electronic identity verification, will be seen as a differentiator by customers, that they will rather sign up to let's say a company that provides a very smooth, a very nice process? How do you see that developing in the future?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say that, because I think the real driver of what customers are looking for in a bank is really that security and trust. The digital we've seen is not necessarily a big differentiator across majority of customers. However, with the new generation, that's obviously changing. So it's less about having that as a differentiator is how banks evolve over time, because they're just really involved in tandem. And so what I meant more about is the leaving revenue on the table. And what that means is, if you're not able to authenticate within 10 seconds, you're just going to give up on buying this product, right? So those are sort of some of the opportunities missed. There is definitely go. I would say that for whether that's going to be a differentiator, we haven't really seen that with fintechs, because that was a big concern when fintechs have arrived a few years ago. And then as you look at who really was the winner, it's not, definitely within certain niches, fintechs have taken advantage of a different customer base. But if you look at the broader the broader picture, that's not necessarily, we haven't seen that truly.
Okay, very interesting. Just to open the floor then to James, just with what's Zamfir just had in mind, and obviously the questions that we had.
Yeah, so I think from a customer perspective, being able to create a digital ID and then that being able to enable onboarding with third-party apps and banking providers in a faster and seamless way, without having to provide that. But I had to kind of go and find all that information, go and find my passport, scan it, upload it, take a selfie. I mean, the ability just to upload on a single sign-on basis and the bank recognize I am who I say I am, I think that's a really great onboarding experience for the customer, for the consumer. And certainly, as an app that's providing a digital onboarding experience, we want that onboarding experience to be seamless. It needs to be fast. We want to remove as much friction as we possibly can to enable the customer to engage with our products and services quickly and engage with the app. So, I can absolutely see the benefit of that. And there are jurisdictions like Estonia which are very forward thinking in terms of having digital IDs. And that's not something that we have in the UK. I certainly think that the absence of digital IDs in the same way that, say, Estonia has them, I think that has also been a contributor for financial crime and why we have a high incidence of financial crime in the UK. So from a company perspective, I can also see some of the benefits of that. I suppose if I was kind of playing devil's advocate, the other side of the argument is, by completely outsourcing the KYC IDV process, we, as a regulated entity ourselves, we are relying on third parties to do everything. Not only identify who someone is and do all the relevant, but also do all the screenings. And perhaps there is a concern, I think, from some institutions that would be a significant material outsourcing of our own regulatory obligations, and how would regulators perceive that? That would only be my concern. But I certainly think it's a great potential experience for the customer, and definitely has benefits for the banking provider.
I think again, very interesting point, because we're seeing obviously now some initiatives that are being launched, an example by the European Union to have an identity wallet, an example, and them trying to figure out how they wanted to do it. And obviously companies like Estonia and also an example Sweden with their bank ID, I think they have very efficient ways already how to verify customers, which are very easy. I think in Germany we have seen kind of also a drive to being able electronically verify your national ID card just via NFC. But then again, are you really including everyone into that by using NFC? Has to be obviously questionable. Otherwise, you would have to also buy one of those card reader machines that you connect to your computer. Again, is that really safe? No. That's for everyone else to judge. So I think the way the market's going right now, I think we're kind of at the brink of getting something in place that might not necessarily solve the problem, because I think we'll always have some sort of fraud, and fraudsters learn. I mean, fraudsters obviously not silly. I mean, obviously some of them are, and they get caught quite easily, but obviously they also develop with the methods that are out there. And also quite interesting, I don't know if you saw in the Apple keynote yesterday, Apple in the iOS 15 are also now allowing you to store your driver's license or your passport on your phone, so you can essentially travel with that. And they will also enable you to be able to open hotel rooms via your phone, which is also essentially quite interesting. So I guess we're in a very interesting time where identity verification or identity access is a very hot topic. I mean, we've seen major acquisitions, major investments into this space in the past 12 months. I mean, we've never seen anything like it before. So Anna, from your perspective, going forwards, and let's say maybe fast forwarding in the next 1 or 2 years, what kind of do you expect from a technology provider perspective? What's where are we going? What are we going to do? and how will it also pan out for for companies?
Well, I think just taking a step back and then going towards that, I think that first of all, just what it was said before, the pandemic has definitely accelerated everything that has been digital transformation. So there's a study by McKinsey saying that I think companies were estimated to be 7 years ahead. So we're probably in 2020, what it was expected to be in 2028. So definitely digital transformation, which starts with trust, is something that is very, very important, especially for financial organizations. Why trust? Because we need to know who's behind that screen. So for banks, it's important. Is Anna who is she says who is, or is it someone else with her ID? So I think there are going to be different changes from the technology that is being used to, let's say, first onboard customers, because before having, let's say, a reusable digital identity, as Rob was saying, we have to think on what technology are we going to be using in order to verify the customer's first time. So, for example, at ID now, just to give a couple of examples, there's one of the technologies that we have is just looking at what we call dynamic security feature. So just a super short video, not just a photo, we can observe things like the holograms. Or I think that the NFC reading is going to become more and more important. And I mean, we've seen it in the UK government that they have been using it in order for the right to remain for Europeans after Brexit. And also, this is something that I see as well in organizations coming to us, because you were saying fraudsters are becoming more sophisticated. So how do we really bring that technology one step ahead of what of where fraudsters will be? So I think those are the areas where I think it will go. And just one last one is, I think standards are going to be very important. So for example, whenever it comes to picking up, again, in that onboarding process before that reusable ID, doing a liveness test. So I think being able to have, let's say, a NIST certified technology or something that really proves that the technology that you're using is essentially one step ahead of those fraudsters that cannot use, let's say, deep fakes, is going to be very, very relevant for financial organizations.
Again, I think, a topic we could probably talk for another, 10 hours about, but unfortunately we're just, limited to 60 minutes, but everyone's happy, to, obviously pick up any questions, after the webinar as well. So if you connect to us on LinkedIn, we'll be very happy to talk to you about some of the topics that we're talking about today. And just, because we're talking about essentially customers having to do certain things to, an example, acquire a digital ID, having to do certain things to be essentially onboarded. And just what is the right level of friction? Is there such thing as friendly friction maybe in a customer onboarding? I think one of my favorite words to use, friendly friction. Is there such thing? Maybe we'll start with you, Rod, and then go to Zemfira and then to James.
Certainly. With bank onboarding, establishing a new customer within the bank, we're just like any other business. There's a level of friendly friction that people are happy to deal with, and to a certain extent makes them feel more comfortable. But that caps out. And so we do have to make sure our onboarding processes are efficient. But we leverage a lot of, depending on the country we're in, we leverage a lot of things that are pretty old school. In Mexico, you can do a video onboarding, but it has to be a live video onboarding. Generally, most customers, they come into the branch. They actually meet the branch manager. In Brazil, that's required. In Mexico, during that process, we get your 4 fingerprints. In Brazil, we get your thumbprint. In Poland, we get your voice print. Everywhere, we get your face print. And by getting all of this information, we can then turn around and provide assurance that you are who you claim to be in a digital session. What's interesting is, as you talked through earlier, the different types of solutions that are coming out from Apple, they are replicating, they're cool. I'll probably use them, but they're replicating what already happens in the physical world, which is great. But in the physical world, I can just as easily produce my passport and I can produce my driver's license. What we're trying to do is to solve something that is radically different. How do I prove that this person is who they claim to be during a digital session? So we can have great new types of identity documents that are issued by governments that are digital licenses or digital passports or just a digital identity document. That's cool. But during a digital session, how do I really know that it's your digital document and that you haven't grabbed it from someone else? I have to do that extra bit of verification. And it's an important thing that we need to recognize as being a difference between the digital world and the real world. There's deepfake technology available now, so that this could be a fake version of me, and someone else could be actually saying the words, and it could be transmuted into my voice, and their facial features could suddenly look like mine. It's not generally available now, but give it 3-5 years and it will be generally available, which means that we have to be very careful to figure out how to make sure that we don't make people's identities disappear online. You want to protect your face, you want to protect your fingerprints and not share them with everybody.
Just to add to what Rod is saying, I think from one standpoint, the banks have to follow the customers. So if the customer is expecting the seamless digital ID, then identification, then banks will follow and they will provide that service. And the question is, are we there now? And we're not there now. And that's the reality of it. It's something that, again, not something that happens overnight. There is a lot of customers who are still, just like Rod is saying, they prefer going to the branch, so they'll need to fulfill their needs. The customers who want to be authenticated digitally, and then we're trying to provide those services to the extent we can. It also needs to be balanced with the internal view, just very similar to what Rod is saying, as all the fraud that is associated with digital ID is completely different level. So the way all the tricks that the fraudsters are playing right now with just sort of limited digital ID capabilities, with the fully blown digital ID where you can access anything and anywhere from anything, that it's a completely new level of how do we protect the customer information, customer data, and how do we make sure that we are on par with that. So ensuring that that is in place and the potential friction, that additional friction that would provide to the customers and customer onboarding, that's something we'll just have to deal with.
Which is very, very interesting challenge, I guess, as itself, because I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, with the whole digital to physical, and then also with the compliance challenges, because again, every region has its own challenges, and obviously, as also Rod touched on it, in every country there's obviously different requirements from that perspective, so you're obviously going to have to bridge that, so speaking around that, obviously with the friction and the compliance, I think James, specifically for you, because I think with obviously Ziglu being closer to it and obviously having to deal with kind of the Brexit situation as well, how do you think this the compliance kind of the compliance challenge for you, dealing obviously with UK customers, but also at the same time obviously offering your services in Europe? Have you seen any big challenges in the past 12 months that have come up for your business?
So not from a Brexit issue specifically. Obviously, we can't passport from the UK now post Brexit, but we are hopeful that we will be able to secure an EU license very, very shortly. but from a UK perspective, we were complying and are complying with the 5th Money Laundering Directive and JMLSG guidance. And so the difference in ultimately between our UK compliance and our EU compliance is very small. In fact, it's probably negligible. We certainly don't see that being a challenge for us, and we would always kind of gold plate our onboarding compliance to be at the highest standard anyway. We certainly experience this trade-off between good friction and bad friction. So customers we want customers to onboard quickly and efficiently as possible and provide a nice experience. If a customer has the inclination to engage with your products and services in your app, you want to be able to satisfy that need quickly. Otherwise, they may just find alternative places to go. So there's definitely a tension in making sure that can happen quickly, but at the same time, making sure that that's done in a properly compliant way. And obviously, part of the process of onboarding without the digital ID that Rob's describing will involve a customer inputting some data. Okay, they can probably do that out and about, when they're on the move. But then by asking them to upload, a passport or a driving license, take a selfie and answer some questions in real time, these are things that perhaps then that creates friction, because the customer first thinks, oh, well, I don't have my passport, I need to find it, don't know where it is, I'll do that later. So some of those friction points can be barriers, actually, even though they're regulatory requirements, and we obviously absolutely require those things to be in place. But unfortunately, from a customer experience, that may not always be convenient for them. So coming back to the digital ID, I certainly see the benefit in that, reducing that friction. And actually the friction would be happening in the background, or the friction would happen even before the customer's engaging with the onboarding experience in the app, which can only be a good thing.
Okay, very interesting. As you obviously say, again, even though it's regulatory requirements, sometimes it can be seen as obviously friction, but I guess it's demanded friction by the regulators, I guess, and obviously is a totally different point. Anything to add to that, Anna? And also on top of that, just to say, have you seen any differences how the privacy requirements have changed now between obviously the UK and Europe?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Brexit has definitely bring a wealth of challenges for financial services organizations based in the UK, and it's everything from financial models to business models, and obviously what James was mentioning as well, that the passporting right that the UK as a EU member state had is gone. So any UK organization now would have to secure license in Europe and comply with different local regulations in the different countries. I think that going back to when it comes to onboarding and digital identity is also a challenge that can be a very big burden for companies, is that they might have to comply with different regulations, and each member state has different requirements. So for example, going back again to the 5th Anti-Money Laundering Directive, specifically for cryptocurrency companies, even though, let's say, a company in Cyprus has a license and wants to service the member states, UK-based companies will have to have different licenses in different countries and comply with the regulations. And on top of that, if you were a crypto company and want to service German-based citizens, then you would have to apply for a BaFin regulation and, for example, go through different ways of verification, like the video-based verification, which is something very similar that we don't typically see in the UK. So I guess those are the challenges. Whenever it comes to privacy, GDPR, obviously before there was like an adequacy, or, well, the UK was part of the EU, so we didn't really have to think on that. But now At the moment, there are some talks on that adequacy. There will be able to be data flow in between the bloc and the UK. There's still conversations going on, and that's something to actually be looking forward in the next couple of weeks, because at the end of June, there's meant to be a decision. And last but not least, just touching on the point on that friction. I think that from talking to different clients, in different countries that complying with different regulations, where I think for us is very important. We work alongside with them in order to help them to develop, let's say, not only the verification, but what are the steps before that verification? It's very important to have a very transparent communication with that client, let them know what's the value and why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you asking me for my ID? And obviously, if you tell them, look, it's a regulatory requirement, obviously, there has to be a very UX embedded into it, but very clear, then I think people or customers actually trust that organization, that they're verifying me. It actually is protecting me from fraudsters taking over my identity. So I think is that level of communication that is very, very important. And that's the friction that might actually be very valuable for the customers as well.
Great stuff, and obviously very valid points, and especially now with everything that's going on. I mean, we're quite lucky in the sense that obviously data isn't being dealt with like sausages being exported from the UK and the EU. An example, I mean, we probably saw the problems anyway, but that's a totally different topic. But at least we're obviously all on top of that. Before we go into the Q&A, because we've got some really, really good questions here. I mean, I saw that Rod has essentially not been answering some of them already, which is fantastic. Before we go into that, I just wanted to maybe start with Cynthia here. Do you see any emerging technologies that you have seen in the past few months that might be a game changer, or anything that's obviously coming up that might be a game changer in terms of customer onboarding or digital identity verification, that is obviously interesting from your point of view?
I would say I've seen a game changer in the last few months. I think I've seen definitely game changers in the last few years, right? So, and I think we've covered them all, from anything starting from creating consortiums and then developing different technology capabilities to access customer information, to crypto, and then everything associated with that. So I think those were definitely gain more momentum, and then there's more to come. I think I'm really looking forward to see what's next, and particularly in the fraud space of what Rod was talking about. How can we, outsmart fraudsters as new capabilities become available?
I agree with you on that. Zafira, it's the big opportunity here. Globally, the different estimates I've seen range from HSB saying it's $1.5 trillion a year that globally we see as being a drag on the economy. McKinsey estimates that if we figure out how to solve this collectively, we can add 3% to GDP by 2030 in developed countries and up to 13% in developing countries. This is tremendous. What we can do is, there's no politician in the world who wouldn't be delighted with having this kind of an impact. It's big, it's really significant. And if we can help people to, decent people who are following things, to help them to be trusted effectively, we give them a great luxury. And for the fraudsters, we shut them down. It's great. To come directly to your question, though, about new technology, at the most cutting edge, the thing that frightens me is the rapid development of quantum computing. We have Santander's very big, and we have a lot of really clever people inside the organization, including a team in Madrid that has some folks who are interested in quantum computing. And what they're showing is that if we don't up our security game, we're going to be in a very challenging environment. because quantum computing is going to allow people to threaten our current methods of encryption. So it's creating even more pressure for us to move faster.
Very good. Thanks for that, Rod. I think, same question to you, James, but also I just want to throw this in because I think, one of the questions that has been put to us from Hadiza. First of that, emerging, technologies, and then the second question is, can self-sovereign identity be the solution for protecting your data and identity?
I think the honest answer to this is that KYC and IDV doesn't really change that fast from a regulatory standpoint. So I honestly don't see things changing that fast. I mean, yes, the external suppliers that we work with, some of those didn't exist many years ago, and when I was doing onboarding of customers and digital onboarding, remote onboarding, where you use external suppliers, that wasn't something that really existed. You had to go in to a physical place, into your bank, bring all your documents. And so I think we've actually come on leaps and bounds, in those years. I think it's just the quality that will improve. So I think one of the challenges that I see with external suppliers is that suppliers they're not error free, right? So they will provide a solution that means that you can onboard customers remotely and digitally, but there will be fails that are false positives, both from a sort of sanction screening perspective, but also IDV perspective. So you will spend manual time reviewing false positives. So the quality of false positives could be improved through better technology, or improved existing technology, perhaps, but also just errors, right? So that the customers that kind of can pass through the system and actually automatically onboard, who perhaps should have failed through existing IDV processes. So I'd say it's more about improved technology than change as such.
That's a very interesting take, and as we know, regulators sometimes they need a little bit of time to get to a conclusion and to a point anyway. So and sometimes in several cases it might take even years. So we all live in a happy place. I think a very interesting question as well, and this is one to Ana Lucia and also Zanfira. From Sid, one of the criteria to counter ID fraud, we ought to reject anyone with a credit file less than 6 months old. And this has resulted in pushing business away, at least with newcomers to Canada. How is ID Now or also Scotiabank tackling these type of issues?
Shall I go first? Yeah, so for example, what you're presenting here is something very similar that we've seen previously in the UK, still a bit, and the US as well. And it is that usually the way in which customers were onboarded digitally was in a data file, my name, last name, their birth, and a lot of information. And this was pinged into, let's say, a credit bureau, and then sent back, yes, I exist or don't exist. And essentially thin file individuals, as you were saying, was very hard to verify their identity. And I think that is why biometrics nowadays are being used as a primary form of onboarding customers, because it is a lot easier for anyone, even if you're 18, zero credit history, but you have this document that your government has provided to you, then you can be onboarded a lot easier. And with the technology, we can verify that this is a real document and that it actually belongs to you because of that face match. Not sure if you want to add anything else, Zanfira.
I think this is more of a question of less about digital ID and more about banks' risk appetite, right, for certain customers and for certain credit history. And I can say that, not specifically talking about Scotiabank, but we could see that the appetite with newcomers, and I was a newcomer to Canada 18 years ago from Russia. There's no bank that gave me a credit card except for one, and that was the risk appetite of that bank was actually aligned with bringing in students back then to there, and then getting business from there. So the answer to this question is it will be less about how do we tackle it, and more about how much energy or whether the certain customer segment is within a bank's risk appetite, and then whether the bank wants to invest the money to actually make that experience frictionless.
Thank you for answering that. And then let's do two more questions, and I think by then, unfortunately, we'll have run out of time. So I'm going to have to pick one thing that has been asked about multiple times, and it is the Open Digital Trust Initiative. So maybe Rod, if you want to give us a little bit of a rundown, what exactly it covers, what it does, and essentially if it will be available globally.
So the initiative is an attempt to organize this global standard. It is being orchestrated through a group called the Institute of International Finance. Many banks belong to the Institute of International Finance. It's a bit like a partner organization to the IMF. And its top level folks include board members from most of the banks. We're also partnering as part of it with the OpenID Foundation, which is very much like its name, open. Everything is done publicly, and input is welcome. It is open source. The goal is to start running broader POCs within the next few months, and we're interested in partners' input and participation. Please look it up. Please reach out if you're interested. We'd love to work with you.
Thank you very much for that. And then last but not least, because we're literally on the dot, on time, but maybe a quick question to everyone. What do you think will be the next big thing in financial services for, I would say, traditional banks, but also for newcomers? What's the next thing? Just one word. If you say nothing, I get that as an answer as well. But what do you think everyone has to watch out for in the next few weeks and months?
I think open banking. That would be my 2 words.
Open banking, Rods. What do you
Identity.
Identity. And James?
Yeah, increasing use of blockchain technology, I think.
Very interesting as well. And Ana Lucia?
The last one is very hard because then they're all taken. I think identity absolutely something that is up and coming, especially with the announcement of Apple yesterday. So something to definitely keep an eye very, very close.
I think from my side, if I may, I think collaboration will be the best innovation that we'll see, because I think we'll see a lot of companies, a lot of corporates working together, because obviously in the past we're all competitors and everyone was like, I don't want to speak to them, I don't want to speak to them. But I think we see it in many fields that collaboration actually helps more than anything, and it solves actually more problems at once, and everyone's more happy. We will copy all answers, so apologies if we haven't answered your question, but we will do so in a blog post afterwards. So we have noted them down, and we will answer them directly. Thanks so much, guys, for being part of this. I think it's been a fantastic session. I know I had to cut some of the things short because I think we could sit another 2 or 3 hours here, because they're genuinely very, very interesting topics that we talked about. So thank you so much to each and every one of you. I hope you all stay healthy and get back to normal, and football's coming home starting on Sunday, thanks so much, guys. Have a fantastic week, and also to all our attendees, thank you so much for being part of it. And looking forward to speaking to you all soon. Please feel free to connect to everyone on LinkedIn, and if you have any more questions, I think everyone will be very interested to be connected with you. So yeah, thanks a lot. Have a great week, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.